Good morning and welcome to CMP Talks. With a lot happening around regional food security and in light of the current inflationary prices and the need to wean ourselves off imported food, the question whether the Caribbean is in a position to be self-sufficient in food comes to mind. To help us gain a better understanding of how much this is feasible is Mr. Riyadh Mohammed, an agriculture consultant, entrepreneur, and a scientist, and currently a PhD candidate in the field. Welcome this morning to CMP Talks. Thanks for being with us.
Hi, good morning. Thanks for having me here. So I can answer almost any questions that you'll have on agriculture. So let's start. Thank you.
Thanks for taking the time to be with us this morning. I know it's a busy, hectic week. There's a lot of talk about food security in the region. In recent months, especially at the start of this year, we heard CARICOM talking about reaching a goal of 25 by 2025, which signals reducing the food import bill by 25% by this year. Do you see this feasible?
Okay, so doing some reading, doing some research, observing some expos and seminars and mandates in the last few months, I really do think that it is feasible and it will happen. Let me just give a brief justification as to why. What I have seen is that the current governments of CARICOM have aligned themselves to reducing the food import bill, the $6 billion food import bill, the regional bill, by 25%. And what have they done? They kind of so what they did was incentivize and give subsidies and kind of boost the agricultural sector in many ways. For instance, public-private sector partnerships, given incentives on investing in renewable energy, focusing on educating the public, the general public, a bit more on commercial agriculture and how to reach those targets. So I really do see it happening by 2025.
Now, this whole charge is being led by Guyana's president, Dr. Mohammed Irfan Ali, and Barbados's Prime Minister, Myanmar Motley. With that, an exchange has happened with livestock for rearing in Guyana because Guyana has the land space. How do you feel us going back to focusing on land stock native to our space? I mean, Trinidad and Tobago was once the leader in the buffalo and the source of beef. Can Trinidad and Tobago even return to this space or lend expertise in this area, even as Guyana and Barbados pioneer sort of go back to it, like a renaissance of livestock?
Okay, so let me try to answer the question. I think it's twofold. So yes, I do believe we need technical and financial support in the livestock sector, not only in Trinidad and Tobago, but regionally. So yeah, no problem at all, right? So I'll just continue to answer the question. Yes, I do believe that we need the financial and technical resources to be placed on the livestock sector in Trinidad and Tobago and regionally as well. So why? One of the most expensive parts of the plate when it comes to animal protein comes from livestock, the meat, milk, and egg portion, right? Livestock and livestock products. And your question would have been related to the buffalo in particular for Trinidad and Tobago. So a brief history on the buffalo. So it was developed in Trinidad and Tobago using 5 different breeds from India, right? Between the swamp and the riverine type breeds. I do believe that we can use this technical knowledge that we have and the few small herds of brucellosis-free buffalo that we have in Trinidad to start a breeding program in other CARICOM islands, because we do have the knowledge, we do have some of the genetics. What we didn't do locally was really invest or continue investing in the buffalo, right? But the opportunity is still there for investment.
Now, in some of the answers, I know you were talking a bit about feed being an issue for animal production. And there's a lot of question on why is it we don't produce our own feed? Just clarify how that really works.
Okay, so feed distribution or supply in Trinidad and Tobago comes really from, we have feed importers in the country, right? I don't want to name them because, you know, they are private sector and public sector, sometimes combined, right? We have these companies, but they are importers of feed ingredients. What they do is mix these feed ingredients in different ratios and try to supply each of the species and physiological states of all of the livestock species, including pets as well. So why don't we make our own feed? Because we don't produce any of the raw ingredients to even lend into creating feed locally. For instance, or do create the local ingredients, we don't supply them at a commercial scale. For example, some of the feed ingredients we need wheat Midlands, rice bran, right? So all of soya beans. So all of these things we need and we import. So what happens, especially during the pandemic, the 2 years ago, was that we had supply chain shocks, and because we didn't get some ingredients, that caused some feed shortages or feed formulation shortages. What also happened is when we did get the ingredients, they were much more expensive because of the logistics and the freight and the additional costs and the shortages of feed ingredients around the world. For example, Australia with climate change and the fires and the extra floods. So all of those things would have an impact on how much the local farmer would have paid for his bag of feed, concentrate feed.
Now, I spoke about the buffalo so being one of the animals that is native to our region. And we've heard Barbados talking about the sheep that they have. Are there any particular livestock in the region that we should be looking at when it comes to capitalizing on?
Yes, definitely. What we want to really do is turn our ship a bit to Jamaica and look to the animals that are dual purpose, like the Jamaica hoop, the red poll. All of those are have crosses with tropical breeds as well that could tolerate the heat, the drought, and the pest and disease that we have in the neotropical zone. So let's look towards the Jamaica hoop, the Jamaica red, the Jamaica black, right? For Barbados black belly, we also want to look at the Barbados black belly sheep. However, that sheep is known for the prolificacy or the fecundity. So there's a gene, I think it's FEC32B. That's the gene that you could isolate or focus on for prolificacy. So you use that in crossbreeding programs so you could have more offspring per pasteurization. So what we have to do is cross the Barbados black belly with other tropical breeds that we have here, the white-head dorper, the black-head dorper, the Catadin, the West African, the Cuban red. That's the type of breeding programs we need to get involved with.
That's a very interesting point. Now, turning our focus from livestock to even food, there's this talk about potatoes and carrots. I think at one point in time, Trinidad and Tobago was looking at growing its own onions and things like that. Um, I know this all falls part into our food import bill. We import a
Yeah,
lot of carrots, potatoes, and things like that. And
yes.
I know you had given me the argument that at one point in time, farmers had said it was a little too expensive, even though it can be grown. Does this notion still remain in light of what has happened in the last 2 years?
I believe, yes, it does still remain. All of those commodities, the onions, the carrots, and the potatoes could be grown or is grown in tropical areas. So it's not that it can be done scientifically or technically done. It's just that the cost of production, when we do trials here, it's a bit too high. So when we have imported foods coming and bombarding a few dollars less on a pound or a kg on all of these commodities, the consumer in this day and time will ultimately choose the cheaper product. In addition to, some consumers even believe that the imported products are healthier, right? And that's a big argument, especially as we don't have organic certifying body, or we don't have much food safety labs that farmers could take their foods or local produce to and prove that they have perfect, healthy, safe, and nutritious locally grown commodities. So all of these issues stem with investment into agriculture. We don't only just need incentives and subsidies, but we need infrastructure and facilities to prove that we have good, safe, and nutritious foods grown locally, so we could convince the consumers to alter their palate.
Now, apart from those commodities that we import a lot of trending foods are like the mushrooms, the kales, and imported things that we have acclimatized our palate to. Um,
Yes.
and I'm seeing that we in Trinidad we have some farmers that are growing
Grown it very successfully.
exactly. Um, do we see that being done on a large scale to even be imported to our regional neighbors?
So it has been tried, it is being done, it is being sold in Trinidad and Tobago. So that's part A. Yes, thankfully that's done. What we need is a bit more public-private sector partnerships or larger investment to actually grow the economies and still grow the farms to a commercial size so that we can export, right? And when we think about export, it's not just to earn the US dollar or earn the foreign exchange, but we have to now compete with the rest of the world on quality, on quantity, consistency, communication, price, and image, right? So that's why even invested in intellectual property to save your trade secrets locally. All of these things we need to do when we look towards export. Yeah.
Okay, wow. No, I mean, we talk about the public-private partnerships there, and recently we had the two agri expos, one being in Ghana and one in Trinidad, and there we saw more of the private sector taking a position and promoting this kind of innovation, selling crops. Um, how viable is this? What do you see in the region going outside of Trinidad to sustain this kind of business model?
Right. So each Ministry of Agriculture and each CARICOM country should invest or put aside some part of the budget to doing at least two expos per year, right? And two different locations of the country. Like in Trinidad and Tobago, we had one in Port of Spain. Next time we might have one in Chigona, so Cuba, or sometimes San Fernando, right? We want it to be, wide and spread so everybody could try to attend, and at least two per year. What we want to do is to continue stimulating the business ideas, the business plans, and all of these agri initiatives from the private sector to meet the public sector demands and consumption patterns of the people in Trinidad and Tobago and the CARICOM. So what that does is to kind of bridge the gap between what this private sector is willing to produce and what the public sector wants, right? And then the government or governmental bodies, supporting agencies will come in between there, give technical experts advice. Some will give funding, some will give investment, some will give refining of business plans and models. So all of these things happen at the expo. And this is something I truly support.
Now, if the region is to really move forward with being integral, having an integral movement in the food commerce sector, apart from transport and logistics, what would you be the best advice for players in the region? Apart from the transport and logistic issues, what other challenges you see regional neighbors facing?
We have a whole host of challenges, over 30 I wrote even last week. I could just call about a few. Some immediate ones right now, we still have land tenureship issues in terms of when farmers will get their land lease documents, land ownership documents. When this is done, you could get access to loans from the agricultural development banks and other funding agencies. When you get this piece of document here, you could actually access your farmer's badge. You could access the incentives of your ministry, the subsidies of your ministry. You could get investors on board. So one document could hold back your entire business and business development. We have the pre larceny issues, we have giant African snail invasions, we have lack of marketing and infrastructure support in the livestock department. We need our livestock and livestock products board in Trinidad to be able to be reopened. All of these things will contribute towards a bigger and better agri sector. But if they are not done at the policy making level or initiated at that policy level, we as the private sector here will continue to suffer.
I think you mentioned three situations globally that you say must be simultaneously get involved in the agriculture sector. And you talk about increasing productivity, efficiency, and nutrition security. And you spoke about the environment, a changing environment. If you care to expand on that as a region, if we are to really get more involved.
Right. So I am glad that we set the target 25 by 25 to reduce the food import bill. Right. So stems off of that, we've seen numbers, we've seen figures, seeing 6 billion US, 6.5 billion US growing, and we're looking at reducing that by a quarter, right? What we actually have to do is focus on three things, the triple bottom line business model. Focus on the people, focus on the planet, and then focus on profits. As business owners, we tend to focus on profits first and neglect the people behind the organizations and in the systems, and even further neglect the planet or the environment. All of the all of the objectives that we have as a curriculum should be aligned to the Sustainable Development Goals, right, of the UN, the 17 goals, right, to eliminate poverty, eradicate hunger, and gender equality, and all of these things we need to incorporate while trying to attain or reduce that food import bill. So that's really taking care of the people. When we take care of the people, we try to educate them and take care of the environment. And we try to push nature positive food systems, responsible production and consumption. So all of these things I would like to see in a concise or even a complete document and to be shared around with every ministry, regardless of if it's opposition, if it's the current government in all of the CARICOM regions. Everybody needs to be on board at the same level in terms of awareness.
Going forward, all of these things require some kind of policies being put in place. What policies would you say is needed, incentives, and if there's what particular part of our tax regime you would say needs restructuring to encourage and boost agro-processing agriculture production in the Caribbean.
Right. So what we have to do, well, for Trinidad and Tobago, I can speak on our country's behalf. We need to revise the incentive and subsidy programs and see which are more outdated, incentives from maybe 20 or 30 years ago, and look to more modern types of agriculture systems that we're trying to do now. Give more incentives for renewable energy, the solar, the water, give more incentives for biogas digesters. Actually, if we could find a standardization system to pay farmers for healthy food, farmers will produce healthy food so that the public could still afford it, the farmers will still continue their livelihoods, and we'll have a blockchain or a database recording system to say, well, this amount of commodity was produced in this period of time by this farmer or this region, the nutritional profile is this, the current prices are that. So this is when we could embark now into global or exporting. So we have a lot of policy changes to make, and I'm just making a general comment because I've been here for a little while, although I'm generally young. We have very, very short-term plans in terms of our country because every government that comes in or out has a 5-year plan. And what divides that 5-year plan is if they change ministers of, for example, agriculture. Then we have 2 or 3 ministers of agriculture in a 5-year period. So then each minister of agriculture has a new plan. So there's no major continuity. Where is our 50-year long-term plan for food production for Trinidad and Tobago? I don't have it. I don't think anybody else has it. Right? We have a roadmap to recovery plan, but it's just a reference document. How much things is really done or are done, to be grammatically correct. So all of these things we need to look at and refine at the policy level. Continuity is most important because we will always be here. The government might change or go, or new faces you might see.
Now, what areas in the Caribbean you think we have to offer the world in agriculture? We talk about food sustainability within our own region, but going forward, I mean, we always talk about the rice, we talk about the chocolate, the cocoa. Apart from cocoa, what do you think we have that is unique to our region that can be exported to outside there?
To be supremely accurate and honest, we have made good headlines on the honey, on the hot peppers, on the cocoa and chocolate, coffee as well to some extent, even citrus long ago, coconut long ago, sugarcane to some extent. We need to get back and work those small or micro businesses, turn them into commercial business models, but now turn it into just not just making money, but a commercial agribusiness at the competitive export level. And this is where our intellectual property would come in on certain flavors, tastes, textures, hiding those trademarks deep within the country and trying to get those export products out. For example, I did some cantaloupe, I think, here in 2018. Those were seeds from Thailand, and those fruits were between 10 to 15 pounds. It was not your typical 5-pound cantaloupe or honeydew melons. So, having some of that genetic stuff here, we could do genetic breeding, create our own varieties, and then get those sold back on the outside. So a lot has to be done, not just in research and development. And I'm not talking about just the tertiary education systems where you just do a thesis and you leave it on the library shelf. Somebody needs to take back up those theses, get some investment, and initiate those on the commercial level so we can get products back out of the country.
Thank you so much, Mr. Mohammed, for giving us some insight into how the region can be profitable with food security and our resources. So we want to put a pin in it there for today. Thank you very much for your time, your insight into the position as the region currently is at with agriculture. And there you have it, Mr. Riyadh Mohammed, agriculture consultant.
Thank you.